So just about every single electric guitar tone that I've ever recorded for this YouTube channel and posted to this channel up to this date has been going through the Strymon Iridium, and I've used the Strymon Iridium as my main amp and cabinet, except for one video which I made about the Fender Bass Breaker 15. Obviously that's a video about an amp, so I used that amp for that video, not the Iridium. But every other guitar tone that you've heard, every other guitar tone that I've used and played through has been with the Strymon Iridium. I quite like the pedal. I think it sounds great. It's simple, it has a few different options, but it's easy to use, and I think it sounds good. So I use it, and it fits my needs. I don't have to worry about miking up an amp. I think it's a great tool. I often put in the description of my videos that I'm using the Iridium or the gear list from that video. And some of you guys must have noticed that because I've been getting quite a few messages, Instagram DMs, basically asking how do you get the Iridium to sound like that. So I figured now's a good time for me to show you guys my process, how I set the Iridium up for my videos, for recording, for playing and practicing. One important thing to note is that my Iridium is completely stock. I haven't bought any other third-party impulse responses. The amps and the cabs inside the Iridium are just how they were when I bought the pedal 2 years ago. It's not even been updated. I don't know if there's a firmware update or anything, but it's just completely stock how I bought it. So basically this video is showing you how you can get really great tones out of the Iridium stock. I know a lot of people find a lot of success with purchasing, other impulse responses and adding them to the Iridium, and I think that's fantastic. I personally haven't even gone down that route yet because I have been enjoying what it does, and I think it's good to know that you can get good tones out of this thing stock. For the signal chain for the video, I'm going to be using my Fender Player Series Stratocaster. It just has 3 single coils in it, Mexican-made Strat, 2019 model, I think. It's a good guitar, nice and simple. Straight from the guitar into the Iridium and into an interface, basically. There's nothing else going on there, no DIs, no buffers or anything like that. I will add some reverb post the Iridium from my Strymon Big Sky, and I will add a bit of drive from certain overdrive pedals before the Iridium, but I will explain that later on in the video and definitely mention when I'm doing those things so that you know what's going on. Yeah, the video is going to be long. It's not going to be a short one, so stick around and watch the whole thing if you can. What I'm going to be doing is going through all 3 of the amps in the Iridium. So I will show my process with the round amp, which is a Fender Deluxe Reverb. I will show the process through the Chime Amp, which is a Vox AC30, and I'll show my process through the Punch Amp, which is a Marshall Plexi. Just to, show you guys how I set it if you're interested in finding out, what I do. Definitely the tones that I get work for me and might not work for you, and definitely aren't the best tones that anyone's ever got out of this thing. But I've had enough questions, so I thought, let's do it. I'll show you guys how I use it. Yeah. All right, let's go to the next part. Let's go to pedal cam. Okay, welcome to pedal cam. This is obviously the Strymon Iridium that you're seeing. I am playing my Fender Player Series Stratocaster, and currently there is absolutely nothing on my board. I might show some videos or some photos of the rest of the pedal board, or at least explain it as I go. But yeah, right now there is absolutely nothing on, and this is the tone that we have. Nothing special, very direct sounding. So I'm obviously going straight from my guitar into the pedal board, but nothing is on, and directly into my recording interface. That is essentially what a guitar sounds like without any amplification or any nice tone shaping from anything. It's a pretty direct, sterile, not very pleasant thing, in my opinion. Sometimes it can work for certain things, and that's totally cool. Certain funk stuff, or I don't know, kind of neo-soul tapping things. I've been seeing a lot of guitar players who have that sort of direct sound, and if you like it, that's totally cool. But in today's video, obviously we want to get away from that direct sound as much as possible, and specifically use the Iridium to get there. So I'm going to show you 2 or 3 kind of main tricks. They're not really tricks, they're not really secrets, it's all sort of there, but 2 or 3 things that I do to get the Iridium to sound as good as possible, to get it to sound as real as possible, as real as I can to a valve amp, and I guess just as nice as I can get it to sound. So again, this is the bypass signal. So first thing I like to do is obviously turn the pedal on and keep everything essentially at noon except for the room. We'll leave that off for now. And the level kind of doesn't matter where it's set. It's currently set to a level that is consistent with the bypass tone. The level, as far as I understand, is not like a power amp control. It's purely just volume of whatever you've got going on in the Iridium, so it doesn't matter too much. I may move that up and down to compensate volumes for where I've got the drive set, but essentially the level doesn't really matter. Again, the bypass signal before I turn the pedal on, turn it on. So already I think it sounds a lot better than it did without it. Still kind of direct and sterile and not super inspiring for me personally, if I'm honest. This might be a tone that you love, and that is totally cool. But the first thing I do with the Iridium when I turn it on is, obviously for right now, I'm going for the round amp. I want a Fender Deluxe Reverb style thing. So obviously I've decided what amp I want. If you've never used one, you might want to flick through the amps and see. I am going to show you how I dial in my settings for each of the amps in this video. But for now, the Fender amp setting is where I'm going to start, the round amp. So yeah, the first thing I do once I've decided what amp I want is kind of flick through the cabinets and see which one I like the sound of the most, or at least for what I'm doing or what I'm going for. As I said at the beginning of the video, the Iridium is completely stock. So the IRs that are loaded into all the cab slots, the cab sections, are just completely stock. Other ones that come with the Iridium when you buy it, so there's no third-party IRs or anything loaded into this. So I would just go through A, B, and C and kind of see which one I like. Before I get any further, I want to apologize for the basic and boring chords that I'm going to use while I'm kind of figuring out tones, but it kind of makes sense to me personally to have a consistent bass line that you're comparing things to. So rather than playing like a certain chord for, you know, one setting and then playing a lick for a different setting, it sort of doesn't make sense to me. So I like to be consistent while I'm kind of A-Bing things. So I apologize if it gets a bit boring. I will do some, you know, maybe nicer and fancier playing throughout the video. But essentially, that's what I do, is go through cab A, B, and C. And personally, even though C's a little bit dark at this point, I think I like C the most. It's definitely between C and A. Yeah, I'm going to go with C. But again, like I said, it is a little bit dark. So the next thing I like to do once I decide which cabinet to go with is just kind of sweep through the EQ controls and see, you know, where I like them set. So let's start with the bass. Yeah, I'm going to back it off a little bit and have it about there. We'll do the same thing with the mid control. One thing to note with the middle control on the round amp is that to the left it kind of changes the character from a blackface scooped thing, and then to the right is more tweedy, and you'll also notice that you get more gain when the middle is turned up. I'm going to leave it halfway. That's sort of where I like it. For right now anyway, I'm digging it, so I'm going to leave it where it is, and then we'll do the same thing with the treble control. Yeah, I think it kind of comes alive a little bit more with the bass rolled back a little bit and the treble turned up. So for me, that's kind of in the range of where I want to go. I still feel like it's a little bit boring, just for me personally. It's not incredibly inspiring. So the next thing, and probably the second most important thing in my opinion on setting the Iridium and getting it to where it sounds good, is the drive control. So personally, I don't have my clean tones set super clean. You might like them super clean, and that is totally cool, and I think go ahead and do that. For me, I just think when you turn the drive up, it kind of starts to come alive a little bit and really sound like an amp. But again, I'll sweep through it and sort of show you what it sounds like. I may have to tweak the level volume just to compensate for, you know, volume drops with the drive coming in and out, I guess. So even though I might not be going for that much gain, I don't know, I think straight away it's sounding a lot better than it did before. Rather than being kind of clean and just kind of boring, it just has a little bit of grit there, or a lot of grit, I guess, at this point. But I don't know if you can hear that straight away, that it just, to me anyway, it sounds a lot better, a lot closer to how I like my amps to sound anyway. But that's not as much gain as I want, because I do want to set it up as a clean tone, but for me, a clean tone might look different to what a clean tone looks like for you, but I'll kind of set it to where I like it. I guess you could call that on the edge of breakup when I play quietly. It's fairly clean, and when you dig in a little bit, it's definitely breaking up, and that's where I like my clean tones to be set. And just to compare, I guess, to the bypass tone at this point, let's have a listen. Yeah, you can hear that. It's definitely a lot better. But the final thing, and obviously you're probably wondering about the room control at this point, that is like the secret sauce to this thing. I think if this pedal didn't have the room, it would be really missing something that kind of really makes it actually sound like an amp, in my opinion. Because the reality is, all the best guitar tones that you've heard, or at least the memory you have of using a valve amp and miking it up, and whether it's for a gig or you're recording, is there's a microphone in front of that thing, and it's in a room, it's in a space, and there's going to be reflections, there's going to be some sort of roominess that is picked up, even if you're close miking, especially with, bringing microphones off the cabinet a little bit to get more room. I think a lot of direct tones suffer from just being so direct and so dry that it just, your ear just doesn't believe it. There's something about it that just makes it feel like, this is not a real amp. But I think we can get a lot closer to a real amp tone by turning up the room. So I'm going to turn it up to about half, and then I'll crank it all the way just so you can really hear what it's doing. Essentially, it's a really short reverb that makes it sound like it's an amp in a room with a microphone a little bit back off the cabinet. So first of all, this is the room all the way off. So super dry, and I'll bring it up to halfway. So if you're wearing headphones or you're in a relatively dead room, you can really tell straight away that that is doing a lot. Definitely with headphones, it really feels like your amp is sort of further back in the room, and especially when you crank it all the way up. It's quite a cool effect. I think I've even recorded some tones with the room all the way up just to kind of get something different, and it's really, really cool. And while it's turned up all the way, I might just add that there are 3 different sizes of rooms in the Iridium. There's a small, a medium, and a large. This is currently set to the medium, which is where I like it, but I'll quickly show you how to change those and what they sound like. So I'll leave the room all the way up so we can really hear what it's doing. And we hold down the on switch, and then when we go all the way to the left, the green light shows us the small room, and this is what that sounds like. So it sounds like a small room. Back in the middle, which is the medium room. And then all the way to the right is a large room. It's a lot bigger, it's a lot larger. Obviously, you could almost use that as a reverb, you know? Kind of cool. I really like it halfway. I just think it's a good middle ground. The short one can be a little bit too, I don't know, too short, and the long one can kind of get in the way a little bit. I don't know. I just like it in the middle. So we'll just on switch. Now we're back to where we were with the medium room size, and I like to sort of back it just off halfway a little bit. So comparing that to nothing. Whoa, super dry. And then, yeah, that's a lot better. So to be honest, that is kind of in a nutshell what I do to set up the Iridium. It's about sort of picking the right amp, picking the right cabinet, and then sweeping through the EQs, finding something that feels natural. You don't want too much bass because, the reality is when you're playing with a band or you're playing in a mix, you don't want a whole lot of bass. It's kind of going to get in the way of other things. Enough top end to sort of cut through without being too harsh. And then the drive is important for me. So setting that drive where it's just on the edge of breakup is where I like it, where it starts to sound like a real amp. And then the room control just brings it, sort of glues everything together for me. I almost never record guitars with that room any lower than where it is, to be honest. By the time you're in a mix, you don't notice, it's not wet, you know what I mean? By the time everything's kind of surrounded by bass and keyboards and drums and other guitars and vocals and percussion and whatever, you definitely don't feel like it's sort of getting lost at all, especially where it is sort of set right now. The guitar's still quite up front and immediate, but it just puts it in a space and actually makes it sound a little bit more real. So let's just kind of compare the final tone that we've got with the bypassed signal and see, how far we've come. Turn it off. Hectic. So much better, I reckon. Yeah, that's cool. And then a few things you can do outside of the Iridium to make it sound a little bit better again is turn on a reverb. So I have my Strymon Big Sky after my Strymon Timeline, which are both after the Strymon Iridium. Bit of a trifecta going on. And I'll have just a sort of a standard hall reverb that I've set up. So I'll turn that on now and you can hear that. And then if I turn on like a big ambient wet reverb in stereo, you can really hear what you're getting out of the Iridium that you're not going to get with having a valve amp sort of set up, because one valve amp is mono, obviously, and with the Iridium, you can run it stereo and have wet effects after it and, get those big ambient tones. Which is super lovely, really, really nice. But if I go back to the Hall sound and I turn on an overdrive pedal, I'm going to turn on the left side of the Brown amplification protein. I'm pretty happy with that tone. I mean, I think honestly, if you heard that tone in a track or in a video, you wouldn't be 100% sure that it wasn't a valve amp. I think it's pretty damn close. So with tweaking the Iridium and getting it to that point, and then maybe adding some reverb in post or with a pedal, and then even an overdrive pedal going into it, a little bit more compression, a little bit more limiting, it's pretty convincing. And the reality is the point here isn't to emulate the sound or the feeling of an amp in a room. It's more to emulate and replicate and simulate the sound of a recorded guitar tone. And I think the Iridium does really, really well. Obviously, if you know how to set it, it can be really, really helpful. So yeah, that is how I set the Iridium. That is a little bit of a snapshot into the process, I guess. That is how I like to set the round amp on the Iridium. I'm going to quickly go through, a lot quicker, go through the Chime Amp and the Punch Amp. If you've learned all you need to learn, I'm happy if you just, do whatever you want. See you later. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Okay, bye. But if you're happy to watch more, I'm going to quickly go through a few things on this and start the process again and do it a lot quicker, and just kind of find a nice spot for the Chime Amp and for the Punch Amp, which is the AC30 and the Marshall Plexi, just in case you're keen on seeing some of the settings that I like to use. So here we go. All right, back to where we were, but this time on the Chime Amp, the Vox AC30 style thing. Let's start with absolutely nothing on, so there's no pedals at all. Here is the bypass signal. I'm going to pick a different key to play in so it's not so boring. So here's the bypass signal. All right, turn it on. That is what it sounds like with everything at noon, obviously except for the room on and the level. And again, I think straight away it's good. It's a lot better than bypass, but we're still not quite there yet. First thing we'll do is go through the cabinets. I'm going to stick with A. I think C is cool too. Not the biggest fan of B, but again, it's gonna depend on the track and the guitar and lots of different things. But I'm going to go with A for this one. And then let's kind of muck around with the bass, middle, and treble. One thing to note with the AC30, the Chime Amp, is the middle control here is not a middle control. AC30s don't have middle control, but they have a tone cut, and so that is essentially what this is doing in this case. So let's have a little look at the bass. I think I like it there just when you start to hear it kind of come in. But again, being an AC30, it's a bright sort of amp anyway, and we don't necessarily need a whole lot of bottom end in it. Let's have a look at the treble. Obviously, having a tone cut, the middle control being a tone cut, is going to kind of interplay with the treble a little bit. So let's have a look at the tone cut and then tweak from there, I guess. Yeah, I think I kind of like that. Bypass signal. Could maybe do with a bit more bass, depending on the context. I don't know, I'm going to back it back off again. It's an AC30, so we'll kind of roll with it. I think we're in a little bit of a better spot to where we were when everything was just at 12 o'clock. But the drive control needs to change for me. It's breaking up a little more than the round amp was at 12 o'clock, but still it's a little bit too clean. So there's quite a bit of gain in there. I know that all of the amps have a little bit more gain than what they would if they were the real amps. I think Strymon added a bit more gain, so which I like. It gives you a bit more flexibility. But I like the gain just pushed a little bit above 12 o'clock. I think that's pretty good. And obviously we're going to bring the room up just to glue everything together and make it sound like an actual amp in an actual room. And then I'll add a little bit of hall reverb from the Big Sky. Yeah, there's some pretty nice tones to be had. We'll go to a bit of a bigger reverb. Yeah, that's pretty sweet. It sounds pretty dang nice. Iridium off with nothing else on. And then we'll add the Iridium on, put my reverb pedal on, and pretty nice. I mean, it's bright, it's sparkly, it's a Vox, but it's cool. And then I'll hit it with the right side of the protein, the green side, which is a Noble's ODR1 type overdrive. And let's quickly do the exact same thing with the Marshall setting, the punch amp in the Iridium based on a Marshall Plexi. So everything off on the pedal board. We'll set it all roughly back to everything being kind of halfway. That's close enough. I'll turn the room off. So this is the bypass signal. We'll turn it on with everything at noon except for level and room. yeah, a lot better with it on. We'll go through the cabs. Here, that was A, here's B. On to C. I think I like A for this one. I think I'm liking where the drive is set actually as well. It's pushing just a little bit and I kind of like that. Let's have a look at the bass control. Yeah, it's quite dark straight away, so I've noticed. So having the bass backed off just a little bit, I think is a good place to start. Let's look at the middle. Yeah, I think somewhere there is good. And then let's see where the treble is at. Okay, let's quickly look at the drive and what it does anyway. There's a lot of gain in there, but I like it about halfway, I think. Maybe, yeah, I don't know. About there, it's kind of cool. The pedal bypass. Yeah, I think it's kind of nice, kind of cool set there. And then the room, again, I like it around there. It just sort of works for me. Just puts it in a room, makes it sound a little bit more real to me. I'll put the whole reverb on. That sounds like this. And like I've done with the other amps, we'll push it with the pedal as well. I'm going to turn on my Fat Dog 212. This is a pedal built by a local builder near where I live in Australia. Yeah, the company's called Fat Dog Audio, so check them out. This is the 212 drive. It's a kind of transparent blues breakery type overdrive. This is without it. And this is with it on. I'll turn the reverb up a little bit. Okay, well, my camera is flashing something, so I think I'm about to run out of memory or the camera's about to turn off. But anyways, that's it. That's a couple of tips showing you my sort of the process that I take on kind of getting the best sound that I possibly can out of the Strymon Iridium. I hope this helped you. If it didn't, I hope it was relatively enjoyable to watch and not too boring. Sorry for the same calls all the time, but that is sort of how I kind of approach getting tones. Yeah, let me know any questions you have, any other tips you have in the comments. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Yeah, I'll see you in the next video.